High Admiral Dracoth of the Galactic Hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching with barely concealed contempt as the primitive human vessels approached his fleet. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had expanded unchallenged across the stars, absorbing or eliminating any civilization that dared resist. These humans, with their crude spacecraft and limited faster-than-light capabilities, would be no different. "My lord," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessels are maintaining their course. They still refuse to acknowledge our ultimatum." Dracoth's scaled fingers tapped against the command console. The humans' defiance was puzzling. Their most advanced ships were barely capable of interstellar travel, their weapons primitive by hegemony standards. Yet they showed no fear before a fleet that had conquered 1,000 worlds. "Final warning," he commanded. "Then we'll show them why the hegemony rules the stars." The message was transmitted, demanding Earth's immediate surrender and integration into the hegemony. The response changed everything. The surface of Earth's moon suddenly rippled like liquid mercury. Massive sections of the lunar surface split apart, revealing what had been hidden beneath, row upon row of sleek warships, their hulls gleaming with technology that shouldn't have been possible. They rose from their millennia-long slumber, hundreds, then thousands of vessels emerging from underground hangars that had been concealed since before the hegemony existed. "Impossible," Dracoth whispered, his combat instincts screaming warnings his pride wouldn't accept. The sensor readings from the human ships defied comprehension. Energy signatures unlike anything in known space, hull compositions that shouldn't exist, and power readings that surpassed even theoretical limits. A transmission cut through every frequency, bypassing the hegemony's most sophisticated encryption as if it didn't exist. The holographic figure that appeared on the bridge was human, wearing a simple uniform that bore no rank or insignia. "I am Guardian Director Nathaniel Wright," the figure announced, his voice carrying an authority that made even Dracoth straighten. "For 10,000 years, humanity has watched from the shadows, protecting younger races as they emerged among the stars. We had hoped the hegemony would grow beyond its hunger for conquest. We were wrong." Dracoth's secondary hearts began beating faster as more ships emerged, not just from Earth's moon, but from Mars, Venus, and distant asteroid bases. Each vessel radiated power that made his mighty fleet seem like children's toys in comparison. "This is not possible," he snarled. "We've monitored Earth for decades. Your technology, your civilization." "A carefully maintained illusion," Wright interrupted. "While we presented a facade of primitive development, we continued our role as guardians of this galaxy. But your expansion, your destruction of emerging civilizations, has forced our hand." The tactical display erupted with new warnings as human vessels suddenly appeared throughout hegemony space, emerging from hidden bases on supposedly uninhabited worlds. In seconds, every major hegemony military installation found itself under observation by ships that defied known physics. "This ends now," Wright declared. "The age of unchecked conquest is over. Humanity is stepping out of the shadows, not as conquerors, but as guardians of balance. Your fleet will stand down, Admiral Dracoth, or witness capabilities your people have dismissed as impossible." As if to demonstrate, one of the human vessels merely gestured with an energy beam. An entire moon-sized battle station, the pride of the hegemony fleet, simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but transported instantly to another location in space. Dracoth's crew stood frozen, watching as their universe turned upside down. The supposedly primitive humans had revealed themselves to be ancient protectors with technology so advanced it appeared magical. Worse, they had been everywhere, watching, waiting, and judging. "Your response, Admiral?" Wright asked calmly. "Will the hegemony choose peace, or shall we demonstrate why our ancestors chose to hide our true power?" The mighty hegemony fleet hung motionless against the backdrop of stars as its commander faced a decision that would reshape the galaxy. Humanity had maintained its secret for millennia, and its revelation was about to change everything in ways no one could have expected. In that moment, as Dracoth stared at the impossible ships before him, he realized a fundamental truth. The galaxy as he knew it had ended. The humans hadn't hidden out of fear, they had hidden out of choice. And now that they had chosen to emerge, nothing would ever be the same. The Grand Council chamber of the hegemony blazed with chaos. Representatives from 100 conquered worlds shouted over each other as reports continued flooding in. Human vessels had appeared throughout hegemony space, emerging from hidden bases that had existed beneath their feet for millennia. Every military installation, every fleet base, every strategic position now found itself under the watchful eyes of ships that shouldn't exist. Supreme Overlord Zarketh, ancient even by the standards of the ruling Dominion species, sat silent on his crystalline throne. His outer membrane had shifted from its usual vibrant purple to a pale gray, a sign of deep distress among his kind. Before him, Admiral Draketh knelt, having just finished his report of the encounter with humanity's revealed forces. 10,000 years, Zarketh finally spoke, his resonant voice cutting through the chamber's chaos. They've watched us for 10,000 years, hiding power that makes our greatest achievements look like a child's first steps. High Counselor Vix of the Stellar Intelligence Division rose from her seat, her cybernetic eyes whirring as they adjusted. Our deepest infiltration programs never detected them. They maintained their deception perfectly, showing us exactly what they wanted us to see. The question is, why? As if an answer, the chamber's central holographic projector activated on its own. The image of Guardian Director Wright appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood First Guardian Mira Patel, her dark skin contrasting with silver-streaked hair that spoke of centuries of life extension technology far beyond the hegemony's capabilities. Your question is valid, High Counselor, Mira spoke, her voice carrying warmth despite the gravity of the situation. Why would an advanced civilization hide itself? Why watch silently as the hegemony expanded, conquering and absorbing others? The answer lies in our own history and a choice made by our ancestors. The hologram shifted, showing scenes from Earth's past, great cities rising and falling, civilizations advancing and retreating. Humanity reached the stars long before any current species. We spread across the galaxy, building wonders and achieving what you would call impossible. But we also saw the pattern that repeats throughout history. The strong dominate the weak, empires rise and fall, and the cycle of conquest continues. The images changed, showing ancient human fleets engaged in battles that defied comprehension, wielding energies that could reshape space itself. Our power became our burden. We faced a choice, continue as conquerors, or become something else. Our ancestors chose to retreat, to watch, to protect. We became guardians, helping ensure that younger civilizations had the chance to develop without interference. Supreme Overlord Zarketh's outer membrane rippled with agitation. You claim to be protectors, yet you allowed our hegemony to conquer countless worlds. We allowed natural development, Wright responded firmly. When civilizations met naturally, we didn't interfere. But there were lines we wouldn't permit to be crossed. How many times did your scientists' most dangerous experiments mysteriously fail? How many superweapons inexplicably malfunctioned? We've been guiding, subtly, always. The chamber erupted again as implications sank in. Every major power in known space had experienced such mysterious failures at crucial moments. The humans had been there all along, invisible hands shaping events. But now, Mira continued, the balance has shifted too far. The hegemony's expansion threatens to strangle the galaxy's diversity, to create a uniformity that would stagnate all growth. We can no longer remain hidden. A new hologram appeared, a real-time display showing human vessels across hegemony space. They weren't attacking, weren't threatening. They were simply present, watching, waiting. We don't seek to conquer, Wright declared. We don't want your territories or resources. We want balance, and we're prepared to enforce it. To demonstrate, one of the human ships near a major hegemony shipyard activated its systems. In seconds, the massive facility's weapons were transformed into public gardens, its prison cells into schools. The technology to reverse these changes existed nowhere in known space. Impossible, whispered High Counselor Vix. Matter transformation on that scale. What you call impossible, Mira smiled gently, we call fundamental engineering. Our ships don't just travel through space, they can rewrite its local laws. We've spent millennia perfecting arts your sciences haven't imagined yet. The implications stunned the chamber into silence. The hegemony's power, their technological superiority over other races, meant nothing compared to what humanity had revealed. They weren't just another civilization with advanced technology, they were something else entirely. Supreme Overlord Zarketh rose slowly from his throne. What are your demands? Not demands, Wright corrected. Opportunities. In 2 standard days, we will host a gathering of all spacefaring races, hegemony, independent, and subjugated alike. Together, we'll establish new protocols for interstellar relations. The age of unchecked conquest is over. The age of balance begins. As the transmission ended, the Grand Council chamber remained silent. The mighty hegemony, which had never known defeat, found itself confronted not by superior firepower, but by something far more terrifying, a civilization so advanced it had chosen to hide its power, watching and waiting until the moment was right to reshape the galaxy's future. The observatory ring of Centauri Prime hung in space like a gleaming crown, its massive structure providing an unparalleled view of the surrounding cosmos. Representatives from over 300 space-faring civilizations gathered within its transparent walls, their ships arranged in concentric circles around the station. The hegemony's fleet, once proud and imposing, now seemed small compared to the assembled diplomatic armada. Within the central chamber, Guardian Director Wright stood before the gathered delegates. The room itself was a marvel of human engineering, its walls shifting like liquid crystal, automatically adjusting to accommodate the environmental needs of each species present. For some delegates, it was the first time they could breathe comfortably outside their ships in decades. "Welcome," Wright began, his voice translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. "Today we demonstrate why humanity chose to hide, and why we now choose to emerge." First Guardian Mira Patel stepped forward, her hands moving in an intricate pattern. Above the assembled delegates, the station's ceiling became transparent, revealing a massive human vessel approaching. Its design defied conventional physics, organic curves blending with crystalline structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The Stellar Forge," Mira announced. "One of our Guardian vessels, capable of manipulating matter and energy at the quantum level." Supreme Overlord Zarketh watched with his inner eyes as the vessel began to glow. "More demonstrations of power?" he asked, his tone somewhere between fear and fascination. "No," Wright replied softly. "Restoration." The Stellar Forge released a pulse of energy that rippled across space. As it touched the ships of various subjugated races, centuries of decay and battle damage began to reverse. Vessels that had been reduced to barely functioning hulks by hegemony warfare were restored to their original glory, their unique architectural styles preserved and enhanced. But that was just the beginning. For millennia, Mira continued, we've watched civilizations destroy themselves and others through fear and greed. We developed technologies not to conquer, but to preserve and protect. The Stellar Forge's energy field expanded further. On dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy, destroyed ecosystems began to regenerate. Polluted atmospheres cleared, dead oceans came alive, and extinct species returned from carefully maintained genetic archives that humanity had preserved. Commander Lyra of the Free Worlds Alliance, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with emotion, stepped forward. "You could have prevented so much suffering. Why wait until now?" "Because true growth cannot come from external control," Wright explained. "Each civilization must find its own path. We intervened only to prevent complete destruction. But now, the balance has shifted too far toward extinction." The chamber's displays activated, showing real-time footage from across the galaxy. Human vessels were appearing everywhere, emerging from dimensional spaces that defied normal physics. Each ship brought with it technologies that the assembled delegates had dismissed as impossible. On a desert world stripped bare by hegemony mining, rivers began to flow again as ancient aquifers were restored. In the ruins of a civilization destroyed by war, cities rebuilt themselves from quantum archive templates. Near a dying star that threatened dozens of inhabited worlds, a human ship began the process of stellar rejuvenation. "This is beyond technology," High Counselor Vix whispered, her cybernetic eyes struggling to process what she was seeing. "This is evolution," Mira finished for her. "Not just of machines or biology, but of reality itself. We learn to work with the fundamental forces of existence, not just manipulate them." To demonstrate, she gestured toward a nearby asteroid field, debris from a planet destroyed in an ancient war. The fragments began to move, not through propulsion or tractor beams, but through the direct manipulation of gravitational fields. In hours, the scattered remnants would be reformed into a habitable world, its history and ecosystem restored from humanity's vast archives. "Your empire was built on destruction," Wright addressed the hegemony delegation directly. "Ours was built on preservation. Every species, every world, every artifact we could save, we did. Not to control them, but to ensure they would survive." The implications staggered the assembled delegates. Humanity hadn't just been watching. They had been archiving, preserving, protecting. Their ships weren't just weapons of war. They were vessels of creation and restoration. A new hologram appeared, showing thousands of human vessels emerging from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. Each one carried within it the seeds of countless civilizations, preserved and protected through millennia of secret guardianship. The age of hiding is over, Mira declared. Now begins the age of restoration. We offer every civilization here a choice: continue on the path of destruction, or join us in building something greater. As if to emphasize her words, the Stellar Forge began a new operation. In the space between the assembled ships, matter and energy coalesced into a structure that shouldn't have been possible, a space station that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, capable of hosting any species in perfect comfort. This station will serve as the seat of a new galactic council, Wright explained. Not ruled by force or fear, but by the principle of preservation. Every species, every culture, every unique perspective adds to the richness of existence. We protected that diversity in secret. Now we'll protect it openly. The assembled delegates watched in awe as humanity's true power continued to unveil itself. They had expected weapons of unprecedented destruction. Instead, they witnessed tools of creation and restoration that redefined the possible. The galaxy's future was transforming before their eyes, and nothing would ever be the same. Deep within the hegemony's former fortress world of Kronos Prime, Supreme Overlord Zarketh watched as his empire transformed. The once mighty military installation had been converted into a center of learning and cultural exchange, not through violence or destruction, but through the subtle manipulation of reality itself. Human ships hung in orbit, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. Another 30 systems have declared independence, High Counselor Vix reported, her cybernetic implants processing the flood of incoming data. But it's not chaos. The humans are somehow maintaining order through it all. The Supreme Overlord's outer membrane rippled with complex emotions. Show me. Holographic displays materialized, showing scenes from across former hegemony space. On worlds where civil war should have erupted, human vessels maintained peace not through force, but through an impossible technology that simply made weapons refuse to function within designated zones. Ancient rivalries found themselves literally unable to clash. They're rewriting local physics, a new voice announced. Master Technologist Ron entered the chamber, his mechanical legs clicking against the floor. I've been studying their methods. They don't just manipulate matter and energy, they alter the fundamental rules of how reality works in localized spaces. In orbit above a contested world, the human vessel demonstrated this capability. Two fleets determined to destroy each other found their weapons transformed into tools of communication. Warships became bridges between cultures, their very structure altered at the quantum level. Meanwhile, at the newly established Galactic Council Station, now named Concordia, Commander Lyra of the Free Worlds Alliance was witnessing another kind of transformation. Representatives from hundreds of species, many of whom had been mortal enemies just days before, were engaging in actual dialogue. The station's unique architecture, existing in multiple dimensional phases, allowed even the most incompatible species to interact comfortably. It's not what we expected, is it? First Guardian Mira Patel appeared beside her, seeming to step out of a fold in space itself. Everyone assumed we would punish the hegemony, exact revenge for centuries of conquest. Lyra's bioluminescence pulsed with curiosity. Why didn't you? You certainly have the power. Because revenge continues cycles, Mira explained, gesturing to a nearby display showing a former hegemony world. Look at what's happening instead. The display showed a remarkable scene. Former hegemony military officers were working alongside representatives of species they had once conquered. Together, they were learning to operate new technologies provided by humanity, not weapons, but tools of creation and restoration. We're not giving them our highest technologies, Mira continued. Those must be earned through demonstrated responsibility. But we're showing them a different path. Power used to protect, to build, to unite. Across the galaxy, this transformation continued. Human vessels revealed themselves not as engines of destruction, but as carriers of lost knowledge. On thousands of worlds, they began sharing technologies that had been preserved through millennia, not to dominate, but to elevate. Guardian Director Wright stood in Concordia's central chamber, watching as former enemies engaged in their first real dialogue in centuries. The station's quantum architecture allowed him to observe every interaction simultaneously, his enhanced consciousness processing the complex web of diplomatic relations forming. "Director," a voice called. It was Supreme Overlord Zarketh, who had arrived without his usual entourage. "I begin to understand why your kind hid for so long. This power, it would have tempted any species to dominate." Wright nodded. "It tempted us too, long ago. That's why our ancestors chose to become guardians instead of rulers. Power without wisdom destroys itself." As they spoke, reports continued flowing in from across the galaxy. The hegemony's military might was being transformed, not dismantled. Warships became exploration vessels, weapons platforms turned into scientific outposts, and soldiers found themselves trained as peacekeepers and cultural facilitators. But not all reactions were positive. In the shadows of deep space, remnants of the old order gathered. Those who had profited from conquest and subjugation watched their power slip away. Secret meetings were held, plans were made, and weapons were gathered, though few understood how futile such preparations would prove against humanity's capabilities. On a distant world that had suffered centuries of hegemony occupation, a human vessel descended from orbit. Its mission was not conquest or control, but restoration. As the ship landed, its advanced systems began analyzing thousands of years of environmental damage. Within hours, poisoned soil began to heal, and extinct species emerged from quantum storage to reclaim their ancient habitats. The ship's commander, Guardian Captain Raj Patel, stepped onto the healing soil. Around him, the planet's surviving inhabitants watched in wonder as their world transformed. "This is what we protected," he said softly. "Not just lives and technologies, but possibilities. The chance for every world, every species, to choose its own path." In the Concordia station, representatives from hundreds of worlds began the complex process of establishing new protocols for galactic cooperation. The human delegates participated not as rulers, but as guides, sharing their experience while allowing younger civilizations to find their own solutions. The balance of power had shifted, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of a new empire rising from the ashes of the old, something entirely different was emerging, a galaxy where power served wisdom, and ancient guardians finally stepped into the light to show a better way forward. One solar cycle had passed since humanity's revelation, and the galaxy had transformed in ways none had predicted. The great observation chamber of Concordia Station hummed with activity as Guardian Director Wright prepared for a historic announcement. Representatives from over 1,000 worlds gathered, their faces illuminated by the shifting light of the station's quantum architecture. In the chamber's center, a new device pulsed with impossible energies, the Nexus Archive, humanity's greatest gift to the galactic community. Its crystalline surfaces reflected not just light, but fragments of history itself, glimpses of civilizations long thought lost to time. First Guardian Mira Patel stood before the assembled delegates, her presence commanding attention without demanding it. "For millennia," she began, "we protected knowledge, preserved cultures, and watched as the galaxy evolved. Today, we share not just our technology, but our purpose." The Nexus Archive activated, filling the chamber with holographic displays of humanity's hidden history. Scenes played out of ancient human vessels secretly intervening throughout history, preventing extinction-level events, preserving dying species, and archiving the knowledge of civilizations on the brink of collapse. From his position among the hegemony delegation, Supreme Overlord Zarketh watched with his inner eyes as the true scope of human intervention became clear. "All this time," he whispered, "they were everywhere." The displays showed human ships moving through dimensional spaces beyond normal physics, maintaining vast networks of hidden outposts throughout the galaxy. Each base contained not just advanced technology, but preserved samples of countless cultures, art, literature, genetic records, and technological achievements that would otherwise have been lost forever. "The age of secrecy ends," Guardian Director Wright announced, "but our mission continues. Not alone now, but together with all who choose to join us as guardians of life's diversity." The Nexus Archive projected a new image, a map of the galaxy unlike any before seen. It showed not just physical space, but layers of quantum probability and dimensional interfaces. Points of light marked locations where humanity had preserved fragments of civilizations, ready to be restored now that the galaxy was prepared to embrace diversity rather than fear it. Commander Lyra stepped forward, her bioluminescence matching the archive's pulsing rhythm. The Free Worlds Alliance pledges itself to this new purpose. We who once fought for mere survival will now fight to preserve and protect. But even as hope filled the chamber, challenges remained. Master Technologist Ron's mechanical legs carried him to a secondary display, showing regions where former hegemony hardliners refused to accept the new reality. Not everyone welcomes this change, he noted. No, right, agreed. Change never comes without resistance. But watch. The display shifted to show a confrontation in a distant system. A rebel hegemony fleet had gathered, preparing to strike at worlds that had declared independence. As they moved to attack, human vessels emerged from dimensional space, not to destroy, but to transform. The rebel ships found themselves gently but irresistibly altered. Weapons became tools for communication, engines retuned to serve exploration rather than warfare. The very metal and energy of their vessels shifted purpose, transformed by technology that worked on the fundamental level of reality itself. We offer a choice, Mira explained to the gathered delegates. Not between submission and destruction, but between growth and stagnation. The Nexus Archive contains knowledge spanning millions of years, but it cannot be simply given. It must be earned through demonstrated wisdom. As she spoke, the archive displayed humanity's gift to the galaxy, a path to advancement that required cooperation rather than conquest. Technologies that would only function when wielded with peaceful intent. Knowledge that could only be accessed by those who proved themselves ready to use it responsibly. Guardian Captain Raj Patel, now overseeing the restoration of a dozen formerly devastated worlds, addressed the assembly through a quantum link. Behind him, a dead world bloomed back to life as ancient species emerged from preservation to reclaim their ancestral homes. This is what we protected, he declared. Not just life, but the infinite possibilities of what life can become. Every species, every culture adds its own note to the galaxy's symphony. Our task now is to ensure that symphony never falls silent. The Nexus Archive's display shifted one final time, showing the true extent of humanity's hidden influence. Millions of preservation sites scattered throughout the galaxy, each containing fragments of civilizations that would have otherwise been lost forever. Now these sites would become centers of learning, where the combined knowledge of countless species could be shared and expanded. Supreme Overlord Zarketh rose from his seat, his outer membrane now showing colors that had not been seen in his species for generations. The hegemony surrendered to your power, he acknowledged. But you offer us something greater than conquest, the chance to become more than we are. That is humanity's true gift, Wright concluded. Not our technology, not our power, but our perspective. We learned long ago that the greatest strength lies not in domination, but in preservation. The galaxy's diversity is not a weakness to be controlled, but a treasure to be protected. As the assembly concluded, delegates from 1,000 worlds began the journey home, each carrying with them a piece of the Nexus Archive's knowledge, not humanity's most advanced technologies, but the foundations upon which each civilization could build its own path to enlightenment. The ancient human warships remained, no longer hidden but transformed into visible guardians. Their presence served not as a threat, but as a reminder that power could serve wisdom, that strength could protect rather than dominate, and that the greatest victories came not from conquering others, but from helping them grow. In the depths of space, countless preservation sites began to awaken, ready to share their stored knowledge with those who proved worthy to receive it. The galaxy had changed forever, and the unexpected revelation of humanity's ancient warships had led not to a new empire, but to something far more precious, a future where diversity was celebrated, knowledge was shared, and the combined wisdom of countless civilizations could finally flourish in peace.